Hi, everybody, and welcome to our first critique for Milestone 4. And before we get talking about this particular exercise, I just wanted to um, mention something I've noticed that some students are having some issues with, which is saving files and editing files. So this is really something I think that comes up for a lot of people, especially when you start with a software, is that when you save your, and it certainly happened to me, I lost a lot of files at the beginning. When you're creating your file in Photoshop or Illustrator, you have a file format that you're working in. It's either the PSD file, that's the extension of the file that Photoshop will naturally create for you without you having to do anything if you save it as a Photoshop document. And Illustrator is the extension is AI.ai. And again, they're just what those files do is they allow you to edit the files. So it's super important that you keep those files so you can edit them later. And you also save those files in a place where you know where you saved that file to, because it's pretty easy to get files lost on your computer. So I just want to refer everyone back to milestone 1. Our very first assignment is where the instructions for how to save a Photoshop and Illustrator file are located. And so for Illustrator, it's part 3, and Photoshop, it's part 3. So if you're working in Illustrator and you're having problems, check this out, and Photoshop, check this out. So you always want to be saving your Illustrator or Photoshop file so it's editable. And these particular tutorials will also guide you to saving them in a particular place, like your desktop, so you know where to look for it again. And they'll also guide you on how to save your files, if you're in Illustrator, how to save it as a JPEG, and in Photoshop, how to save it as a JPEG. And that's the file format that you're asked to submit to the classroom. And I noticed there's still some students who are submitting Illustrator files or Photoshop files. So it's super important that you start taking charge of being able to know how to do that. And this class is definitely a learning process, so it's just something to learn. One thing that I just want to emphasize too is you want to make sure never to change the extension of a file. Let's take a look at a file extension here. Just give me a minute. So if you see, I just have a folder here. This is the folder of everyone's work for this assignment. I just download it into a folder and keep it for the duration of the class. And you can see that each file has an extension on it right here. And sometimes, if you don't see that extension when you look at a file on your computer, sometimes you actually need to turn that extension on. And so you want to maybe do a little research in your, for your particular operating system. I'm on a Mac, so I think by default this shows up like this. I don't remember now. It's been a while since I maybe changed it. But in any case, this extension happens automatically when you save the file from Photoshop or Illustrator and when you tell it what to do. So if you tell it to save a JPEG, that's what it's going to add. If you are working in Illustrator and you save it as an Illustrator file, it will automatically add that extension. And you want to make sure never to change that extension manually. Now you can change it, like I can go in here and type over this, and change it to whatever file I want. However, it will create a problem when I try to open this file later. Let's just turn it back. When I try to open it later, if you send it to somebody, they won't be able to open it because it won't be recognized as they won't match the extension and the actual file format. So never do change those. If you want to save as a JPEG, then you go back to your Illustrator Photoshop file and save it as a JPEG. Okay, so one of the keys to emphasize here is you do always want to be saving your AI or PSD file so that if I double click this now, it's going to open in Illustrator and it's going to allow me to edit that file. Okay, so I can go back in and change the colors and the text, really anything that's editable. So you want to make sure. And once you have saved in a JPEG, so this JPEG file will no longer ever be editable. It can't be editable. I mean, you can go in and you can actually make changes to it but it actually operates as a single image, so you can't go in and like select all of these different squares like you were able to do in the template and kind of do all these great easy things with it. You'd have to spend a lot of time trying to fix it. And so if you ever do lose your AI or PSD file, you're just going to have to recreate it, for whatever class you're in. And it actually doesn't take that long, even if in a more complex file. If you've done more work on it, it's always a hassle, and I've done it myself. But if you've done it once, it's pretty easy to go back and kind of just go back and see what you've done and redo it, and it's actually a really great learning experience. So don't panic if that happens to you. It's happened to pretty much everybody, I can assure you. Just go back and recreate it. Especially in this class where we're doing pretty simple things, it's a nice, it's not going to be too hard to do. And again, it's a good learning experience. Okay, so I have heard from someone, I can't remember who it is now, who's been having trouble with their software, that their software isn't allowing them to save. I can't remember if it's an Illustrator or Photoshop, like one of the files they're not able to save. And that can happen. So sometimes, it's rare, but sometimes you might get a glitch in your software and it's not performing as you would expect. And so in that instance, that's a technical issue. It's probably beyond, what you might be able to do some research online. I actually did some research on this particular problem the student was having, and it did seem to be some kind of conflict, in which case you would need to contact our technical support or our tutoring service, or try to solve it on your own. Maybe restart your computer. Something that since we don't have that much more time in class, if you can, it might be worth it to, if you're having trouble, let's say saving if you're not able to open your AI or PSD files again. I think that was the issue. Maybe just keep Illustrator open for a few days on your computer without closing it. I do that sometimes so that your file, you don't lose your file. But again, that's a technical issue, and it's something that you probably should look into further with, tech support. Okay, anyhow, so I spent a lot of time talking about this, but again, I did notice it was something that was coming up for folks. So try to see if you can, clear up any of the issues we talked about by just going over the video instructions again for milestone 1, task 1. Let me know if you have any questions, and hope that helps. So in this assignment, we're actually covering the final 2 color schemes that we're studying in this class. So we started with monochrome, then we went to analogous, then we went to complement and split complement, and now we're finishing with triad and tetrad. So every step of the way, as we've gone through each milestone and learned new color schemes or color harmonies, same thing, we've actually added a little bit more complexity to the color harmony. From the monochrome, which was 1, now we are working with 3 or 4 hues, 1 hue to 3 or 4 hues. So for example, the triad is 3 hues, and the tetrad is four hues right in here, equidistant on the color wheel. And the triad is 3 hues, equidistant on the color wheel. So I always think of these color schemes a bit like the split complement, in the sense that they start to appear like a little kind of random, in the sense that if you were not trained in color theory, if you looked at them, you think, wow, all those colors, amazing, they seem to go together, but it seems like that person is a genius for putting them together that way. But really, it's color theory at work. It's the use of just basically dialing in these harmonies. You know what you're doing, and you work the magic from the sidelines, and then you create these, amazing color combinations. I tend to think of triad and tetrad as being, again, a little, even like the split complement, really, very designerly. They have a sort of a sense of sophistication about them and freshness. So they're some of my favorites because of that. They're a little bit unexpected, and they just seem to really, again, look very polished in a way, or fresh, or something like that. Especially when you start working with some of the, when you works with some of the tints, the shades, and the tones, and kind of play with them. Um, and I think that is. Oh, the other thing I just wanted to mention, these swatches that we're creating, these are super cool ways of working with color. This particular series of swatches has 16 colors, but you can see how you could maybe expand it if you wanted to and have more colors in it. It's like almost like a mood board, or something you can show the client and say, hey, this is some of the colors I'm thinking of for the project, even without having added them into the project. So you can kind of create these mock-ups, and I think they're very effective in a lot of different. You can imagine, in interior design, for example, how these would be really amazing to start working with to kind of get a sense of where you're headed, is to use, just a series of swatches like this. All right, well, let's get started. Okay, Cassia, all right, let's see. So starting with your triadic, yeah, good job. You've got blue and red and green equidistant, and you've really played with the the different colors, and you're representing nature, which makes sense to me. It's almost like you can see like maybe the sky and the grass, or the plant life, and maybe a little bit of the sun here or something like that. It's a little bit more of a darker muted color overall, or palette I should say. And then for Tetrad, yeah, this looks really good too. So you have sweet and sour. I like this really comes through here. Almost like, so I'm thinking sweet and sour candies maybe, or it has that reference maybe to candies, and I definitely get that sense from your palette. So you've got like these purples here, and then you're working with the sort of the magenta color here, which is great. Yeah, it's amazing how that's a really, one thing I'll say, with these palettes is that, we think we are, a little bit limited when we think, or some people do, they think, oh, we have these color palettes, or color harmonies, I should say, and you can only use these certain hues, and that feels limiting. But in actual fact, there's again a lot of creativity involved, because you can take these and really create a tetrad that has a very specific quality to it. In this case, you're looking at this kind of sweet and sour quality, and you can also really play with the colors like you have here. You've got sort of a yellow green, and then this kind of a little bit more of a bluey green, and how you're also playing with all of these colors to really make all of them really like harmonize together. Do you know what I mean? Playing with the tints, tones, and shades to do that. So I think that's the way you want to be thinking about these two, is how can you really, kind of experiment with them till they really look like they're very deliberately put together. So yeah, these look great. The only thing I would say here is maybe these two, at least from my view, look a little bit similar, even though I don't think they really actually are, if in terms of the color picker. Like, I think one of them is very much a shade, and then one of them is a little bit more of a tone. But maybe you could move them out maybe move this one out a little bit further, so that these two look a little. It's always nice to have distinctly different colors in your palette, so that none of them look like, so that you have a more, you have a lot of a range. Like in here, each one is very distinctly different. Okay, nice job. Okay, Janae, all right. So for yours, it looks to me like you kind of got this sense of like organic fruitfulness, and then also sweet quality. And I think both of these look good. So what I would say is just make sure when you're working with the hues that you keep them fairly as close as you can to, like, for example, this hue right in here. Whatever you pick, like, you don't necessarily have to keep it right on the dot, like for your for your base hue. Like if you want to like move it a little bit over just a little bit, but as long as you're sort of in the range. And then when you transfer it in here, try to keep them really like as close as possible. So I'm looking right here at the 24 for the hue for your orange. So keep that at 24. Can you see how it's really it's changing a lot? You're really working, very differently here. So when you pick something, so here's 24, keep it at 24 as you go to the next, um, the next whatever you're doing. So for example, I'm still here at 24, if that's the one I'm going to use. And then when I put that in there, it stays at that. So check all of yours. I noticed that you have a lot of kind of shifting going on, or a little bit of, it's enough that it's starting to, I think, pull away from them being a tetradic. Like, so for example, in this one right here, this is your purple that you've chosen, which is, if we look again, just translate it into numeric 270, just kind of like a rough guide. There's 270, that's right. And then it's shifting a little bit in there. You can see the underlying hue here as we shift it. It's changing to different parts of the color picker. So just kind of go through there and work on that. I think that's the main thing I would say here, is just to adjust all of those two palettes. And then I think just, as long as you make sure that each color swatch is distinctly different, which I think you're definitely doing that pretty well here. So just keep doing what you're doing with that, and you'll be in good shape. Okay, Sora. All right, so Autumn here with your triad and Under the Sea. Yeah, good. Yeah, and so I think overall, I think all of your choices are really good in here. Um, I might just look anywhere where you think that maybe the swatches look a bit similar. How might you make them a little bit different? Like here, these two look a bit similar, so when you're in there, the palette, you could maybe just go a little further out, for example, tone it out a little bit. Now this looks a bit too close to that one, so I could probably see, let's see, maybe going even a little further out. Just kind of play with, sort of look at where you, ooh, that's a nice color. So those grayed out ones really can give you, there's a lot of tones. Having some tones in your palette, like this one here too, I think can really expand the palette quite a lot in terms of your options. So I might like maybe work on this one a little bit, making it a little bit more different. Just kind of look through and see, where do I see anything that looks a bit similar, and what can I do to maybe mix it up a little bit, and at the same time, honoring the qualities that you want to have for your adjectives that you've added in here. I think overall this looks pretty good here. Maybe these two are a bit similar. What do you think? Maybe these two are a tiny bit similar. Maybe you could work on those as well. Yeah, just kind of go through there. It's kind of a fun game to evaluate colors like that. Okay, Ebony, I really love the idea of thinking about emotions and how they could translate into a palette. That's a great idea. So Sorrow here, so you've got a lot of dark colors, which is definitely, I think, appropriate. Some that are a little warmer and cooler, those different qualities. And I think this works really nicely as a palette. I really especially like some of these really toned out colors you've added, like this one, this kind of beigey color, and this really, I think, are really good things to experiment with in your palette. So this looks really, really good. I don't see you need to make any changes with this one. And then for this one, Wise, that's an interesting one. Like, this is, I think, in a way is a little more ambiguous, isn't it? Like, what are the qualities of wisdom, So, I don't know, I think how you interpret that into color, it could be quite personal. So yeah, I love these yellows. I think they look really, really nice. And you've got some blues in here from here. And then also the more of that kind of, the blue that is more like what we think of as a true blue right in the middle here. So the only thing I might suggest in here, just two possible things, is one with the black. I would bring that in a little bit more, like bring that in so that you can sort of pick up a little bit, make it, quite dark, but see if you can still see a little bit of that red in there. That will tend to bring a color into a color harmony a little bit more easily. And for the whites, I think maybe take one of these. They look a bit similar now, so maybe take one of them and make it very pale, whatever you want in here. That the underlying color's red, or I think this one's red too. But whatever you want to do with that, make it super pale. What we like a really really strong tint for one of your four hues, just to kind of maybe with both of them bring in a little bit more of that color. Same with the black. Okay, that's the only thing I think you need to do in here. Hi, Adriana. Okay, these are great adjectives, steamy and beauty. And so for your colors here, let's just zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so what you want to make sure here is with the triad is always equidistant on the color wheel. So you've got red and yellow, and then this last color would be blue. That would be the third hue that you'd want to add into your palette. So I would just, looks to me like you've got the red and yellow in your palette, which is great. Let's just look at that. Yeah. So yeah, I think you've got that. You just want to make sure, just take a look, just like I mentioned before. So your hue here is 357. It's just a good way to keep it on track. And I think you're actually, it's overall, look, I think this is the only one that's a little bit out of that range. So everything else is good. So just add in that blue, okay? You can just take approximately a third of these and add the blue into it. And then just watch out of having, you have a lot of colors the little swatches here that look the same, and you want to make them different so that you have more options when you use them for the next assignment. And then so for this one, right here, the colors that you would be using would be equidistant on the color wheel, and there's two ways of making a tetrad, and it looks like to me like yours are going to be in here and here, and then here and here. I think that's what you're going to be doing here is this little, you draw a kind of an X through there. Okay, so I might review the information on the tetrad again just to make sure you have it, and then just adjust your colors. Let's see, I think you've got the teal here. Maybe you've got them, hold on, maybe you just didn't draw them out here. Hold on, I'm now just looking at your, and then here. Yeah, so this would probably go over a little bit more in here. And then you've got this color and this color. So these might be a bit close, but they're getting there. So I would just kind of tweak them, like use this color, this color, this color, this color, and then just make sure that each of your hues, your swatches I should say, are different. It looks like you've got a lot of repetition in here. So yeah, just have fun. It's fun to play around with these, working with, if you take your magenta here, this color right here, think of all of the different, if you have like maybe six, I guess you'd have four swatches maybe of the magenta. You don't have to just have four. You can, you don't have to have them completely balanced, but if you have four of the magenta, think about all the different colors you have in here to experiment with, and what you think would maybe best suit your idea of beauty. Okay, Corinne, so I'm opening yours in Illustrator because that's the file you submitted, and I can definitely view it here. Just make sure in future just to submit as a JPEG, and just, make sure to save the AI files, or the file for your, yourself. Okay, so it looks like you have started the assignment, maybe not quite finished it, which is fine. That's what the draft phase is about. You want to start with just making sure that you're picking in any one of these three color wheels your triad. So that would be three colors equidistant on the color wheel, and then you would just be using those colors in your color harmony. It looks like you've chosen, a few beyond that, which can happen. So just make sure, you know, that you're using those. And I would say probably the same thing here. Just make sure that you choose, you know, on one of the color wheels and choose which ones you want to work with, and then just add those into your color palette here, your swatches. So I would say for you, just to make sure to review within the M4, Milestone 4, Task 1 instructions, just make sure to review the Illustrator tutorial right in here. Start with the assignment introduction and then go to the Illustrator tutorial. It'll walk you through how to work with the template, and you know, make sure to review the schemes information in here, as well as within the learning path itself. You know, head back into the learning path. Just make sure that you acquaint yourself with the color schemes right in here. There's text. There's also the textbook color schemes in here. Just make sure that you know, go over those really thoroughly until you feel like you understand them. And let me know if you have any questions. Hi Bianca. Okay, so you have a triad of red, yellow, and blue, and you're calling it fun. Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's one of those things where everyone's idea of fun might be a little bit different, and that's okay. So I could really see a lot of different color palettes for this one. And playful, you've added a little bit sort of a kind of lighter or sort of more saturated colors, which I definitely think of has that light, playful quality. And you've worked with the yellow and green and magenta and blue here. That looks really good. So the only thing I would say here about changing is these swatches look quite a bit similar. So I might just change one of them a little bit. You know, just have fun. See, maybe it's a little lighter. I think you could definitely, with playful, you could definitely, you know, playful to me has a light quality, so maybe one of these could go, you know, quite light, so you have that option. Or whatever you like, you know, just make them a little bit different. Okay, good. Okay, Eliza. Yeah, so you have purple, orange, and green, and your term is life too, which is good. You know, it again, life can be interpreted in many different ways. So you have sort of these deeper, richer colors. And then for your tetrad, 4 colors equidistant on the color wheel, and it looks like you have a kind of a purpley red, orange, greeny yellow, and blue. Yeah, that looks good too. So, and it looks like you're working with the idea of loyalty. Good. Yeah, I like all the colors you've chosen here in terms of, you know, the difference, you know, toned out, lighter, darker. That's always nice to have in a palette, so you have a lot of options. And again, loyalty, you know, I think when we think of loyalty, I'm not sure if there's any specific colors. I think if you look up loyalty as on the internet in terms of symbolism, I'm not, what color do we have here? I want to say blue or purple, and blue comes up a lot. So I think that makes sense that you would have some of that in your color palette. Okay, nice job. I don't see anything you need to change here. Okay, Gabrielle, so you've got aquatic and rosebud. Those are nice terms. And so, okay, so for the triad, you want to make sure that you're working, you know, 3 colors equidistant. So instead of red, you'd actually be using orange right here. Green, purple, and orange would be the 3 colors that would be equidistant on the color wheel. So you're probably going to need to do a few adjustments here. Watch, it looks like maybe even in the color palette you have here, you're adding in some colors that are not part of this one that you've chosen. So when you adjust to your correct triadic, do make sure that you are just putting in the colors that you have chosen here. It looks like you're sort of mixing and matching quite a few different ones here. It's really important that you just stick to those colors for this exercise. And then for triadic, for this one, based on what you've chosen here, you've got the magenta, you would also add in the red here for your triadic. And make sure that you're representing all of the different colors in here right? So you want to make sure that you have all of those hues. You may not have, you may want to have like a few more red. For example, you don't necessarily have to just have equal numbers of each of the hue, but you do want to have some in there so that you are actually creating that tetradic. So for you, I'd really recommend heading back and looking at the color harmonies here for triad and tetrad. That's from the learning path. Just review that, make sure you understand that. Take a look at the instructions for this assignment and review those because there's some information in there. And just review the learning path a little bit more. There's also the textbook information as well on these color harmonies. Okay, Chris, so you have calm and happy. Yeah, calm, I can really, so you've got red, blue, and green. And I would say that for calm colors, that is one I think we definitely kind of have an idea of what calm is. And I think you're right that the blue and the green really are, cool colors are calm colors. They're more introverted and they're just more sedate. And, if you paint a room blue, especially maybe not a really bright blue, although that works too, but a sort of more muted blue, like for example, that one, that's a really nice color. It tends to really calm people down. Whereas the warm colors, all of the warm colors really, like anywhere in here, tend to really be very active, active on the body, on the mind. So I think having an emphasis on these colors in your palette is a really good idea. And I would say that when you work on your design that is associated for the next exercise, really emphasize the cool colors in terms of how much of the color you use, keep that in your design and maybe just use the red as a little bit of an accent. So there's not too much of that. So I would say overall this looks good. I might just watch, there's a few colors here, like can you see this is very close. So maybe make one of these a little bit different. Maybe you could even tone it out a little bit more. I could see, because when you tone out a color, you start getting a kind of a calmer color because it's more desaturated, so you might want to do that. I'm just looking through here to just see if there's any opportunities for us to make slightly different colors. So, these two are a little bit similar. Maybe you could sort of tone one out. So just kind of go through here and I think you've done a good job here at dialing in the right hues. Pretty much, so you just want to maybe just double check and make sure you don't have colors that are too similar so that you have more options. This looks good here. This is happy. Yeah, definitely see these as like happier colors. In general, I always see kind of the tetrad as a little more happy, especially if you use more saturated or tints. It's just somehow there's something about it that has that. So you've got yellow, green, and that's very nice. Yeah, I like the changes you've made here for the yellow and then the green. That's also really nice. Different experimentations here. And then you've got your blue here. Again, that looks really good too. That one's a little, can you see how that one's changing a little bit? This one right here. So you might want to just take a look at that, the hue number here, 240, and just dial that in there to make sure that you keep that a little constant, because you notice it's going a little bit more towards the green here, and you could sort of pick up on that in the palette. And I think this looks, I think we already checked that. What did we not check? Maybe the magenta? Yeah, let's take a look at the magenta. Oh, that's that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Yeah, so okay, I think that's it. So nice job here, and look forward to seeing everyone's next design.